North Country History lesson, we discuss Black History Month.
Emily Griffin met with the town of DeKalb historian about his book recapping Black history in the area.
For 20 years, Brian Thompson has been searching through extremely limited records on the African American residents of St. Lawrence County.
It's because no one had written about it, and of course in the 19th century, Black people weren't considered the same way, that an equal footing with everyone else.
Nearly all local records neglected to include information about the Black people here. One might assume there just weren't many in the area, but that's not true. There were religious leaders.
A number of free Black ministers preached in St. Lawrence County, mostly of the Free Will Baptist Church.
There were also military heroes.
That is Curtis Sneed, and he was drafted from Messina into World War I, and he won the Croix de Guerre, the highest military honor in France.
And there were wealthy, influential politicians. George Swan of Potsdam owned several mills, was elected to the village council, and became the second Black man in the state to serve a grand jury.
And the first was Frederick Douglass. And the second was right here in St. Lawrence County.
Although New York was on the right side of abolishing slavery, after the Civil War, some influential figures started changing their tune.
The media started to run these horribly racist serialized stories about Black people, and it was almost like they were trying to re-educate these former abolitionists. Doesn't make you feel good, but we know that things have changed, and hopefully people have changed. But at the same time, I think my work is really important to understand there always have been Black people here, and they've been important parts of the community.
In his new book, Thompson has included census information, footnotes, and glossaries in hopes of making it easier for others to expand upon his research and further uncover the lost history of Black residents in the North Country.
We all lose something when we don't know our real history. And in order to have a rich and valid history, we need to tell everybody's story.
Emily Griffin, 7 News.